The Nintendo 64 disk drive has a long and troubled history. For those not in the know, the 64DD was an add-on for the Nintendo 64 that was created to expand the storage capacity for the system's card-based games. Not only that, but the DD would also bring other features to Nintendo's 64-bit system, such as web browsing, content exchange, and other online capabilities. Released in 1999 after numerous delays, the ill-fated add-on's late release during the Nintendo 64 life cycle sealed its fate, and the 64DD arrived dead in the water. The story behind the system and its development is definitely full of plenty of highs and lows. But realistically here, lots of lows. At any rate, let's take a look at the fascinating yet troubled history and demise of the 64DD. The Nintendo 64DD was announced at Nintendo's Show Shinkai, later Space World, in 1995, but wasn't revealed to the public in earnest until 1996. The DD would connect to the Nintendo 64 via the EXT connector located at the bottom of the system. The 64DD made use of proprietary 3.5-inch discs that were roughly twice as thick as the standard 3.5-inch floppy. They held up to 64 megabytes of data, which was significantly more than the capacity of initial Nintendo 64 cartridges of 8 to 12 megabytes. In order to use the system, users had to insert the included 4 megabyte expansion pack, which would enhance the RAM of the Nintendo 64 base unit. The 64DD also featured a real-time clock, online capabilities, more on that later, and a built-in 36 megabit chip that contained integrated font and sound files. This chip would give game creators more leeway in development as they didn't have to worry about putting all of their audio into the carts. This would, in turn, free up more space for other game content. While the 64DD couldn't read discs as fast as the Nintendo 64 could read cartridges, they could read roughly 2 to 3 times faster than the CD-ROM drives on the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation. For the record, the N64 cartridges had near instantaneous data transfer rates of 5 megabytes to 50 megabytes per second. The 64DD discs could transfer up to 1 megabyte per second, and PlayStation and Saturn discs could do up to 300 kilobytes per second. Differing from CD technology of the time, the 64DD was a burst access machine. Unlike the CD-ROM format, which was capable of streaming data to consoles or computers, the 64DD sent the data to the Nintendo 64 in high-speed bursts. Now, this was problematic for developers hoping to make use of full-motion videos, FMV, or streaming audio into games. However, it wasn't completely prohibitive. Though compressed, developers were able to squeeze FMVs into Nintendo 64 carts before the end of its life cycle. The 64DD discs gave Nintendo 64 developers access to not only more readable data, but also more writable data. 38 megabytes of the 64 megabytes on the disc could be used for writable data. This could be used for games with extensive save data, such as sports games, in-game creations like racetracks, pictures, and so much more. Developers were free to configure the disk data in any way that they pleased within those requirements. Manufacturing costs and time were also less for the 64DD discs. Nintendo 64 carts cost as high as $30 or more to produce per cart. However, 64DD discs cost significantly less, but still not as low as the CD production costs, which could be as low as $1 per disc. There were 3 different ways to develop games for the 64DD. First, developers could opt to make a game run exclusively off of the disk drive. Some appeals to this pattern would be to cut costs for the production of games and to simply give the developers more space for their titles. Second, it was possible to create a game for the standard Nintendo 64 console and then release an add-on disc with additional content. This had great potential for titles like sports games, where developers could release a base cart and then release discs in subsequent years with updated rosters and graphics at a cheaper cost for manufacturing and possibly to the end user. Multiple titles were in development using this method, including an expansion to The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time called Uda Zelda, which was later released on the GameCube as the Master Quest, and the F-Zero X expansion kit, which did see a release on the 64DD. The third, more sparsely used option was to develop a game that would make use of both the 64DD and the Game Boy via the transfer pack. The disc-only and add-on options were used in the small number of released games. However, only 2 titles were released for the DD that utilized Game Boy connectivity, both in the Mario Artist series although there were a few others in development. Before release, the Nintendo 64 DD promised numerous facets of online connectivity. Teaming up with the media company Recruit Holdings, the idea behind RandNet, the online service for the 64 DD, was born. Some of the features that were brought to the system were the abilities to do the following: surf the internet, create custom avatars, use online message boards, exchange messages between game programmers and producers, play online against other players in Japan, observe other people playing games, participate in beta tests, access a digital magazine for various kinds of news, access and listen to music online, online shopping, and a whole lot more. Ultimately, not all of these features were included in the final version of the RandNet service. Before the launch of RandNet and the 64 DD, a registration period was held between November 11, 1999 and January 11, 2000. Up to 100,000 people could register to utilize the service. Finally, after numerous delays, the 64 DD released in Japan on December 1, 1999. Upon release, the system was available to purchase through a subscription service with 2 different configurations. Interested gamers had a few different ways that they could pick up one for themselves. For 2,500 yen a month, players would receive the 64 DD unit. Another configuration, set at 3,300 yen per month, would offer the 64 DD as well as a special black translucent Nintendo 64 console. Both offered access to the RandNet service and what was called the 64 DD Starter Kit. The Starter Kit included the 64 DD unit, a modem, a modular cable, the 4 MB expansion pack, and games that would be delivered every few months. Nintendo also allowed for the purchase of a 12-month flat rate plan at local retailers across the country. 30,000 yen would get you the 64 DD Starter Kit, RandNet services, and games, while 39,600 yen would get you all of this plus the translucent black N64. After the initial year was finished, the RandNet service would be available for 1,500 yen a month. There were a total of 10 discs released for the 64 DD. Here are all the titles that were released for the system chronologically. In December 1999, Mario Artist Paint Studio and Doshin the Giant. In February 2000, the RandNet disc, Mario Artist Town Studio, and SimCity 64. In April 2000, F-Zero X Expansion Kit. In May, Japan Pro Golf Tour 64, and a sequel to Doshin the Giant, roughly translated as Doshin the Giant Tinkling Toddler Liberation Front, Assemble. In June 2000, Mario Artist Communication Kit, and in August 2000, Mario Artist Polygon Studio. Initially, Nintendo planned to send RandNet subscribers 64 DD discs bi-monthly. While they more or less held to this, some games saw slight delays, and others were made available at retail. A wide variety of games from numerous game makers were in development for the 64 DD. Unfortunately for the add-on, as time passed, the need for the device grew less and less. Several big-name titles were originally in development for the 64 DD, including the likes of Mother 3, aka Earthbound 64, Seaman, Dragon Quest VII, Fire Emblem 64, Resident Evil 0, Mario 64 2, and so many more. The planned titles were either released on cartridge, moved to other platforms, or cancelled entirely. Several factors led to the untimely demise of the 64 DD and the RandNet service. The numerous delays definitely played a part in this. The further away gamers got from the Nintendo 64 release in 1996, it was also getting more difficult to explain to consumers and publishers alike what benefits the 64 DD brought to the table when compared to CD-based formats. In an interview with Shigesato Itoi 2 years before the 64 DD launched, Miyamoto went on to say, "It would have been easier to understand if the DD was already included when the N64 first came out. It's getting harder to explain that after the fact." As storage sizes for N64 cartridges increased in the latter part of the N64 lifecycle, the 64 DD was less relevant than when it was originally conceived. To compound matters, by the time the 64 DD was available to the public, next-generation systems like the Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and the GameCube were out or just around the corner. With sluggish sales and general disinterest in the product, the announcement came in November 2000 that the RandNet service would be discontinued as of February 28, 2001. When it was all said and done, the Nintendo 64 DD certainly didn't light the world on fire. It won't be remembered by gamers for its great lineup of games, and it certainly won't be remembered for being able to deliver on all that it set out to do. However, some of the concepts behind the system and the games that were being developed for it still live on to this day. Online gaming and online services, a few things that Nintendo really wanted to try with the 64 DD, are both mainstays of modern gaming to this day. Even game concepts that would go on to make things like Animal Crossing started out based on the idea of the game releasing on the 64 DD. Nintendo certainly took some risks with their add-on that didn't pay off in the short term. However, the 64 DD does deserve at least a tiny mention in the annals of gaming. Thank you for watching, and for more videos like this, reviews, podcasts, and a whole lot more, keep it locked here to thefamicast.com.